Hello students and welcome to ePathshala. I am Prerna Trehan and I am an assistant professor at GGDST College, Punjab University, Chandigarh. In today's module, we shall be looking at Roman thought and particularly focusing on the idea of Roman law and Cicero's contribution to the same. The present module will firstly look at the idea of Roman political thought. It will therefore further move on to the ideas of Roman citizenship, how it was envisaged and what are its basic features. Moving on, we shall also be looking at the differences between Greek and Roman political thought. Furthermore, we will be deconstructing the ideas of Roman law as well as what were its basic tenets. Lastly, we shall be looking at Cicero's contribution to the idea of Roman law and how his certain contributions still hold ground in the ideas of civil law adapted by numerous countries. The Romans derived their philosophical ideas from the Greeks. However, they gave it a more definitive shape, which marks an advance over the Greek thought. Roman Empire was vast compared to that of the Greeks. Here one finds that democratic city-state became despotic world empire. The Romans, however, were able to tackle the diversities by establishing universal system of law throughout the empire. It survived for hundreds of years mainly because of the magnificent system of law. The Roman theorists like Polybius, Cicero and others for the first time spoke of universal citizenship. Romans loved to indulge in more than action and not in speculation. They could not produce any theory, however they conveyed their ideas through their activities. Features of the Roman political thought. Stoicism formed the predominant political theory of the Romans. They also borrowed from the non-Stoic Greek political thinkers. Practical-minded Romans cared more for the developed institutions than for the evolution of political philosophy. The Romans systematized the Greek political thought and in doing so formulated a new body of principles which constituted an improvement of the political thought of Greeks. The new principles are broadly concerned with: first, creation of positive law; second, separation of politics and ethics; third, distinction between state and society; fourth, political sovereignty and legal personality of state as makers of law. The Roman conception of state. Whereas with Plato and Aristotle, the state absorbed the individual completely, Romans thought the state to be natural and necessary. Furthermore, they distinguished the state from the individual. The state, as well as the individuals, had definitive rights and duties. The Romans laid emphasis on the individual, and the state existed to protect the rights of the individual and against the state itself, which was recognized to be a legal person as much as the individual. This was the basis of Roman private law. Popular sovereignty. While the state was the legal sovereign, political sovereignty lay with the people as a whole. In theory, even the emperors were representative agents of the people. The emperor was the fountain of law because sovereign body of citizens had delegated to him their own authority. The delegation was irrevocable and could not be withdrawn. There was no redress against the abuse of officials of their delegated authority. Revolutions were unjustified. The legal fiction of monarch receiving his powers from the Roman people was later overshadowed by the theory that imperial authority was a divine gift. Not only did political sovereignty lay in the people, but even the laws were made by magistrates in agreement with popular assemblies. The idea of popular sovereignty became more prominent during the Republican period. Roman imperialism. Romans did not believe that any individual had a particular and absolute right to rule over them because of hereditary claims. The king possessed absolute power of the state, was high priest, and was responsible for peace as well as war. Power was a gift to him, but this gift was absolute. The first Roman political philosopher who wrote on the Roman government was Polybius. He began his writing by giving the cause of the origin of the state. He classified, like Aristotle, the government into monarchy, aristocracy and democracy with their perversions, tyranny, oligarchy, and extreme democracy. To him, the earliest type of government was monarchy. He considered a mixed type of government to be the best safeguard against political revolutions. In the Roman constitution, the consuls represented the principle of monarchy. The Senate represented the aristocratic principle, and the popular assemblies were democratic. Overall, there was nothing much original in the political philosophy of Polybius. Cicero, who wrote about a century after Polybius, was the greatest Roman representative of the Stoic school of political philosophy. During his time, political conditions of Rome were chaotic. The economic changes had sharpened the hostility between patricians and the plebeians and had made the old system of checks and balances unworkable. He too, like Polybius, believed in the mixed type of constitution. His book, De Republica and De Legibus, represent an appeal for the restoration of old mixed constitution with its healthy systems of checks and balances. Like the Republic of Plato, Cicero's De Republica is in the form of a dialogue. Again, like Plato, Cicero tried to visualize an ideal state and laid down the principles of morality. Being a Stoic, he believed that state originated in social institutions of man. Cicero gave it a political complexion. In De Legibus, he laid down that the civil and constitutional law must be based on natural law and reason. He emphasized on the importance of justice in a state. He believed in the universality of law and nature, as well as preached the doctrine of universal brotherhood. Therefore, Gettel remarks that the political ideals of the Greeks and Romans were complementary. Romans had no genius, yet their political systems exercised great influence. Romans gave to the world not political philosophy, but the ideas of representative law. Thus, the first contribution of the Romans was the concept of law. Its influence on forming the basis of civil law of many countries cannot be denied. The Romans further contributed to the idea of order. Before the beginning of the Christian order, Rome had developed into a world state. They prepared order to the Greek notion of liberty. Individual liberty was crushed for the maintenance of order. The Romans achieved unity. The growth of the Roman Empire was knit together, and there was a sense of unity amongst all the people. Furthermore, the Romans developed the concept of centralized despotism. Rome was the nerve center of the empire, and the vastness of the empire made centralized despotism a political necessity. The all-comprehensiveness of the Roman Empire resulted in the growth of the idea of cosmopolitanism. Similarity of conditions leveled down distinction between men and led to the growth of the spirit of brotherhood. The Roman concept of citizenship. In order to understand the Roman citizenship, entire Roman period may be divided into three phases. Rome made her appearance in history as a monarchic city-state. It then entered into the Republican era, and finally, this era, after a couple of centuries, transformed to the period of Roman imperialism. During its monarchic period, political rights belonged only to part of the population known as patricians. The remaining part, known as plebeians, did not enjoy any right to citizenship. The idea of Roman political thought regarding citizenship is very significant in the history of political thought. The Roman theorist has established the concept of citizenship on the ideal of universalism and thus extended and glorified the consciousness of citizenship. They said that the right of citizenship should not be the monopoly of elite class. They also added that the right of citizenship should be extended among all people. The Roman political thinkers opined that law should not be distinguished between the people of the society. It should not be distinguished between upper class and lower class or between the elites and the common masses of the society. They were inspired by the consciousness of equality of all the people, and therefore it can be said that apart from propagating the idea of universal citizenship that was liberal and humane, The Stoic philosophy also propagated the ideals of equality, fraternity, and universality among the people, and the ideal of universalism inspired and influenced Roman political thinkers like Cicero, Polybius, etc. Romans wanted to establish world cities in places of small city-states. They believed that only within a large republican state the ideal of universal citizenship as well as world citizenship can be realized. The ideal of universal citizenship as evolved by Roman political thought was developed on a very realistic basis. The consciousness of world citizenship primarily developed as a result of military conquest. The Romans did not make them slaves but made them citizens who enjoyed all the rights equally with the Romans. With the expansion of Roman Empire through war from 90 BC onwards, new areas and territories came under the control of the Roman Empire. The people of these areas were given full citizenship rights. As a result, the idea of Roman citizenship expanded to a great extent. In a word, this qualified citizenship enjoyed by many of the allies took them to the path of agitation, which ultimately led to their full citizenship. But the conquered peoples of the areas beyond the Italian peninsula had any political rights, and so little guarantee against administration by a despotic magistrate except possibilities of his impeachment at Rome after the expiration of his office. Thus it can be said that the right of universal citizenship, as propagated by the Roman political thought, was extended to all human races. It was neither confined to the people of any particular state, nor to any special class or strata of population. In this regard, the idea of universal citizenship of Rome was totally different from the narrow and elite-centric citizen of ancient Greece. The Romans were interested in expanding the notion of citizenship among the entire human race. So on one hand, they have recognized humanity of human beings, and on the other hand, they have tried to eradicate the artificial discrimination among people and inspired them to become members of international society. Therefore, the idea of Roman citizenship's humanism, fraternity, and universality have got manifestation. Differences between Greek and Roman political thought. Gettel remarks that the political ideas of Greeks and Romans were complementary. He observes that in contrast to Greek ideas of liberty and democracy, Rome placed chief emphasis on the ideas of law, order, and unity. The weakness of the Greeks lay in their inability to overcome internal strife and external conflict which cost them their political independence. The Roman world was destitute of any great political philosopher. Polybius and Cicero were only a poor comparison to Plato and Aristotle in the field of political speculation. The democratic city-state was replaced by Roman ideals of purity, order, universal law, and cosmopolitanism. Some of Rome's unique achievements were that she unified her population and brought the Western world under her imperialist control. With the process, she crushed individual liberty and transformed the republican city into autocratic empire. Rome was compelled to destroy the Greek conception of freedom and democracy as well as to make the state highly centralized and powerful. Liberty degenerated into anarchy in Greece, order became tyranny in the Roman Empire. But cosmopolitan power of Roman and the Stoic Christian conception of brotherhood laid the foundation of the modern viewpoints. Unlike Greeks, Romans kept away from moral rules and never allowed them to have any role in the sphere of politics. As political life of Romans was marked by unwavering trust in positive laws, it was possible for them to draw a clear line of distinction between politics and ethics. Therefore, all their actions, including political, it was not morality but law that was taken to be their ultimate guide. The Romans indulged in no abstraction. They looked at state as a legal association that had its own rights and duties. The Romans ascribed supreme authority to the state, but this they did on the basis of the argument that state represented a superior moral force. The state to them was supreme because it possessed the legislative omnipotence. State is the marker of laws binding on the state as well as the individual. On the other hand, Greeks considered the state as an ethical association for the attainment of virtue. The Greek political thinkers regarded the state as an ideal and provided the yardsticks of a good administrator and a good citizen and pointed out the essentials of a good administration. The state was thus viewed as a legal person exercising its authority within the limits of law, and the individual was no less a legal person. They thought that, like the state, individual as a legal person had his clearly defined rights and duties. The laws of the state were to see that the rights of neither the individual nor the state were infringed upon. In this way, the Romans, unlike the Greeks, separated the individual from the state. In fact, to the Romans, both the state and the individuals enjoyed separate and autonomous areas of activity. Romans were the first to recognize a clear distinction between state and society, and this idea was totally unknown to Greek philosophers who could not but identify state with society. The contribution of the Romans has been regarded as the historic contribution in Western political thought. The idea of universal citizenship was totally different from the narrow and elite citizenship of Greece. The Greek political thinkers wanted to confine the right of citizenship among upper-class people of the society, but Romans did not believe in such a concept of divided citizenship. They spoke of extending the right of citizenship to all people of the state. Greeks believed law was to be found in reason itself. Nature was the source of law, and human reason was the means through which nature's wishes could be discovered. The duty of the state was to apply law rather than to create it. Romans argued that the law was rule over all and must be made equal throughout the empire. They emphasized universality of law and legal equality of all. Roman law and Cicero. Roman laws were codified by means of 12 tables, and the courts controlled by the patricians made subject to the laws of these 12 tables. The internal social problem of Rome was thus being solved by means of leveling the influence of law. Rome was fighting externally to extend frontiers of a political rule. By the end of 3rd century BC, Rome became one of the major Mediterranean powers. The problem was to consolidate and maintain the vast empire, and Romans tried to meet this problem by establishing a uniform system of law throughout the empire. Roman Empire survived for hundreds of years mainly because of this system of law. People living in different territories found out that it is safe for them to be ruled by Rome, since Roman laws gave security and regularity. Their life was dependent on the justice of law, of courts. Roman law remained unchanged in spite of the change in the ruling order. Under Roman law, all the members of the empire could earn status of Roman citizens of Rome. All provincial courts were under the control of the central authority that supervised officials administering one kind of law for all. The secret success of the Roman Empire lay in the magic of this Roman law under the constituent parts of the empire that shared common sense of autonomy and equality. The Roman law breathed the air of cosmopolitanism throughout the empire. In all their actions, including political, it was not morality but law that was taken to be the ultimate guide. To keep politics away from morality, Romans evolved this idea of state as a legal association. The state was thus viewed as a legal person exercising authority within limits of law. Cicero and Roman law. Among the few Roman political thinkers, Cicero stands as an eminent one. Cicero's issue of politics was not only relevant to Romans, as also treated as fundamental throughout the ages. Like Republic of Plato, Cicero's De Republica is in the form of dialogue. In De Republica, he laid down that civil and constitutional law must be based on natural law and reason. He emphasized on the importance of justice in the state and believed in the universality of law and nature and preached the doctrine of universal brotherhood. Further, Gettel points out that Cicero's concept of law was right, reason, and universal as well as eternal. The greatest legacy of Cicero is his formulation of the idea of natural law. He agreed with Plato in believing that the principles of rights and justice were eternal, and further he agreed with the Stoics that a supreme universal law existed in nature. According to Cicero, justice is secured by law, which by nature is capable of distinguishing things that are just from things that are unjust. Justice is thus dependent on the law representing the highest reason that is universal, unchanging, and everlasting. This idea of rational eternal law is discoverable by the observation of nature, which is the real foundation for reason and justice. As Cicero explains, justice is in terms of law. In the same way, he also looks at the state in the light of law. He traces the origin of the state to a fundamental sociability of man, human beings having a natural instinct to live together and love others. State was therefore not artificial, but a natural institution. Cicero emphasizes the legalistic character of state. By doing so, he distinguishes the state from society. Thus, he argues that the state is founded on the consent of the whole people. In other words, state represents a people brought together by bond of law into corporate body with the supreme legal authority. Let us now summarize whatever we have picked up in the modules. Firstly, it is important to understand that there was a fundamental difference between Greek political thought and the Roman political thought. While the Greek political thought, as preached by Plato and Aristotle, looked at the state as a moralistic institution combining both politics as well as ethics, the Romans differentiated from them in a crucial manner. For them, politics and ethics comprised of two entirely different spheres. Furthermore, they did not look at the state as an abstract association. For them, the state was legalistic in manner and was the bearer of a positive law, which further led to the conception of justice. Cicero, in this manner, gives important contributions to the idea of Roman law. The Roman law, in fact, became the basis of unifying and universalizing the idea of citizenship in the entire Roman Empire. Instead of the Greek city-states, which differentiated between the elite class of citizens and the rest of the slaves and women, the Roman political thought gave citizenship to most of the people belonging to the entire empire. While slavery was justified on the notions of justice, the idea of universal citizenship and brotherhood were also evolved. This, in fact, lays foundations for many of the things about citizenship in today's modern political theory. Thus, the Roman political thought, especially its ideas regarding citizenship and law, are of crucial importance till date. Thank you.